everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 722 with our review of the Banshees of Inisherin. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week on the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. This week, we had a review of a film that maybe not a lot of people can see right now, and that was After Sun. But now we're talking about a film that everybody can see, and of which is, you know, according to Jamie, the story of what would happen if Stephen decided he wasn't going to be friends with me anymore.
That's very true.
She definitely cracked herself out. We were pulling up to the house after watching the film, and she was like, "I know how you can start the episode out when you guys sit down to record it." And
but for me, it's running, so I'm going to cut off a toe if you talk to me again.
Oh man, I hope you don't own any shears that would be strong enough to lop off one of your toes, though.
Do you think that's why the island is called Inisherin?
Nice, Stephen. That's when you're all on a little island by yourself and there's not a lot to do. You need a little bit of excitement. You have two options. One is to play music, and one is to lop off parts of your body. But yeah, are you excited to talk about this film, Stephen?
I am. Yeah, I'm excited. But first, I think... So I also thought about pre-show banter for this one, and I think more than any other movie in recent months, this is the one I have to ask, what was your drink order when you watched it? Because it feels very important to me. Like, I'll tell you right off the bat, I got the nitro coffee stout, like the closest thing to a Guinness I could get. It just felt like necessary that I do that, even though it was like a noon screening. You know, it was respectable, but I treated it as a brunch, and I still drank a somewhat high ABV coffee stout because it's what you do. Yeah,
I definitely expected that they might have Guinness available for some reason, but I just went for a cocktail. I forget what the cocktail it is, but it was something from their special menu. I got the special burger and the special cocktail.
Oh, you got the spicy burger?
Yeah, which was pretty tasty. You gotta love spicy cheese and onions.
Spicy just felt wrong for Jamie's probably gonna listen to this, so I don't want to stereotype, but spicy feels wrong for Irish. Like Irish, I feel like I want it to be like savory and like I don't know. I want it to be comforting. I don't want it to, rock my world. So I got goat cheese and bacon pizza, which seemed like nice and savory and goes down easy with the beer.
Yeah. I guess this film just wasn't big enough for Alamo to do a special menu. But if I could get it like a full Irish breakfast,
yeah, I was thinking that. Like, I would have had the fuck out of like a Guinness and some black sausage. That would have kicked ass.
It would have been pretty great. Yeah. But unfortunately, we didn't have access to that. But we did have access to this film in general. And I assume you made it in on time and you didn't miss the first 5 minutes of the film and suddenly be thrown out like
wait,
you have.
They used to be friends? Yeah, I made it, and I made a point to come early so I could make my drink and food order and get nice and settled before the movie started. And then they ignored me until 2 seconds before the movie started. But still, I did my part.
As is usually the way. But yeah, what do you say, Stephen, we get into this review?
Let's do it.
All right, we're going to take a listen to the trailer for the Banshees of Inisherin and come back and give everybody a review.
Colin, Sonny, Larry. Didn't you and he used to be the best of friends?
We're still the best of friends.
No, you're not.
Who says we're not?
Sit somewhere else.
Now, if I've done something to you, just tell me what I've done to you.
Well, you didn't do anything to me. I just don't like you no more.
You didn't like me yesterday.
Why does he not want to be friends with you no more? Why is he 12?
What the hell's going on with you, me feckin' brother?
He's dull, Siobhan.
But he's always been dull.
The other night, 2 hours you spent talking to me about the things you found in your little donkey shite that day.
Well, it wasn't me little donkey shite, it was me pony shite, which shows how much you were listening.
If you don't stop talking to me...
Colin!
And if you don't stop bothering me, I have a set of shears at home. And each time you bother me from this day on, I'll take those shears and I'll take one of my fingers off with them. And I'll give that finger to you until I have no fingers left. Does this make things clearer to you?
Not really, no.
Starting from now. But shush like, Polly. You know, shush like.
Yeah, I'd shush like. Would you not want him to have to do the one finger to see if he was bluffing, like?
No, we wouldn't.
Because worst comes to worst, he can still play the fiddle with 4 fingers, I bet ya.
Go on back to your own gang now, Polly.
And talking to me, are you?
Why aren't you talking to Porrig no more?
That wouldn't be a sin now, would it, Father?
No, but it's not very nice either, is it?
Do you know who we remember for how nice they was in the 17th century?
Who?
Absolutely no one. Yet we all remember the music of the time. Everyone to a man knows Mozart's name.
I don't, so there goes that theory.
Can't be waiting around for any more of this madness.
Let's just call it quits.
We won't call it quits. We'll call it the start.
All right, that was the trailer for the Banshees of Inisherin. 2 lifelong friends find themselves at an impasse when one abruptly ends their relationship with alarming consequences for both of them. Stephen Miller, what did you think of the Banshees of Inisherin?
So this is when I announced I'm leaving the podcast. A year ago, you spent 2 hours talking to me about Tenet, and I just... I don't care what you found in Christopher Nolan's shite. I just don't. No. I love the Banshees of Inisherin. I mean, I love. I'm going to say both McDonaghs, though I'm less familiar with John Michael McDonagh's work. But Martin McDonagh, you know, I've seen all 4 of his films. A lot of people fell off the bandwagon for 3 Billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. I loved 3 Billboards as well. I seem to just be picking up whatever he is putting down. And this movie, I think, might be his best one in the sense that a lot of what he does, it relies on this blend of comedy and despair, this kind of like syrupy sweet bleakness where it's like, it goes so hard into darkness that it comes out the other end and becomes absurd and almost hopeful just because of how ridiculous darkness feels by the end of his movies. And this one is more contemplative. It's actually closer to his brother's movie Calvary, I think, than it is to anything else that he has made. And not only because Brendan Gleeson, you know, stands on a beach wearing a cloak in a beautiful island and has a scene in a confession booth. It's also because this is really a movie about what does it mean to be a good person? What is the value of being a good man? What is the value of anything we do in a world where evil goes unpunished, where people will just behave the way they behave and there's no retribution to it? Who do you want to be? Like, it is a very thought-provoking movie while also being extremely funny. You know, very moving when it wants to be, especially in, I would say, the third act of the film. And it just... I just think it is so well done, and so much of that comes down to Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson, who just, they play off each other as well, if not better, than they did in Bruges, while being very different. You know, the movie is nothing like that, right? This movie does not, aside from a few plot turns that are clearly meant to kind of shock the audience or, you know, jolt them out of their complacency or anything, make them know they don't know what they're watching anymore. This is not a movie where the characters are heightened to 11. This is a movie where they're just 2 people who are generally kind, decent human beings, who just are both going through a kind of like depression, a kind of uncertainty about how they fit in the world in their own way, and they don't know how to talk about it directly. You know, they're kind of gruff about it, but neither of them, I think, come off as being over the top evil. They're not hitmen. They're not murdering people for fun. They're not like doing any of the Martin McDonagh things. They're not coked out like 7 psychopaths or anything. They're very like, they're human beings. And I think this movie manages to weave the comedy and the sorrow and the bleakness and the fun and it is thrilling even when nothing is happening. Like, it's the most play-like of any of his movies, and it also feels totally dynamic and riveting, and like I could have kept watching it for hours. And then it all, of course, is set across this backdrop of this implied, if not metaphor, at least like parallel to the civil war that is happening on the mainland while they're here on this island. And it's about the kind of the absurdity of fighting, but then also the meaning you derive from having something you think is worth fighting for, even if you're wrong. And I think it is just a movie that is so good at opening up questions, and it is just such a joy to watch the characters in this movie interact with each other. I just found it really, really, really wonderful, and I had such a great time watching it. What did you think of the Banshees of Inisherin?
I mean, obviously I enjoyed this film. I had an amazing time watching this film, and I joked, I think in the sign off for our last episode, that this is going to be another film that is both funny and depressing as well. I mean, this is we saw After Sun last week, but we decided to review it this week unintentionally with a film. So we have a film, an Irish film and a Scottish film, both kind of about how men deal with depression and sort of the state of who you are and where you belong, and kind of like what is your goal with what you want to be and what kind of person you can be. And this film is kind of an absurd premise, right? Two friends who were friends yesterday, suddenly one of them just decides he's not going to be friends with them. He has a purpose. He's trying to achieve something with his life. He has got to a point where he is weighing the amount of time he has left on the planet and what he wants to accomplish in his time on the planet. And his lifelong pal maybe is standing in the way of that. in a way, just because he's just a nice guy. And I think that there's a lot of really funny and also very sad and tragic sort of stuff all blended together and just crisscrossing back and forth. And it's kind of a film that I mentioned that I didn't really tear up during After Sun, but there was definitely a moment in this film that got me pretty good, which happens. I'll just ambiguously say it's two men riding on a little thing like it, that. I don't know why, but that just got me. Me pretty good.
It's a beautiful moment, and it's the kind of I don't know if we're going to do spoilers or not for this movie, but that was one of the things that I made a mental note to bring up here, because I think the trailer, and this is a movie where I kind of wish now I hadn't seen the trailer so many times, because I think just enjoying the journey without having any idea where it's going would have been, you could have just told me Martin McDonagh, Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, and I'd be like, great, sold, gonna watch it.
I'll be there.
Probably gonna be one of my favorite movies. But it's easy from watching a trailer to think this is going to be a movie about a nice guy who might be dull as fuck, but it's generally a nice guy in Colin Farrell who suddenly is just being ignored by his best friend. And there's a good guy and a bad guy, and we're going to try to unpack, why this guy suddenly became mean, why he suddenly turned bad. And the movie is not interested in doing that. Like, the movie has there's an interaction in the trailer where Brendan Gleeson's character Colin talks about no one is ever remembered for being nice. You're remembered for doing something great, like for making music, for doing something that outlasts you. But nice is not the same as kind, right? Yeah. And that scene is such an interesting reminder that being a decent human being, being kind and uplifting in a genuine way is still something that is valuable, and none of this movie is about I'm going to be an asshole. And I think it's so much more interesting and kind of about the existential angst of being a man who is getting older and doesn't know what legacy they've left. I don't know, that scene also got me too, basically. That was honestly one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Yeah, it's an interesting way that this film is able to play in the space of being just funny and absurd while still being really, really heartfelt and touching. And yeah, like taking on this idea of what feuds do to people in general. And sometimes even at the cost of the thing that you are feuding over, like you are so willing to do something for the principle of it that you're willing to sacrifice the thing that you're doing it in the first place for. Is just it's just a fun a thing. And you know the way it plays with this idea of, we have lots of films about people being from a small town and potentially wanting to get away, but that's even more compounded when that small town is completely surrounded by water and like everybody in that town, like there's a great scene where they come into like the local shop and like the woman's just like, "What news do you bring?" And she just wants to hear stories because that's the only thing of value, is some story that is not something that we've already heard, because we all know all the business of all the folk that live around here and stuff like that. So yeah, it just every moment that they introduce a new character, it's like, what kind of new, like they're amazing, like probably the most amazing confessional scene ever, which is pretty great. Yeah, just in general, I had an amazing time with it. And I just, as you said, it was one of those things where it was kind of like, but when it finally ended, you're like, man, I could definitely sit with this for quite a bit longer and really enjoy my time here. Yeah.
And the thing is, this movie, Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson rightly get most of the attention. Like, this is basically a two-hander, a 15-finger. They're like, the supporting cast is great. Like you mentioned the fact that every time a new character is introduced, you just like, they bring something new to the equation. And like, there are a lot of, I assume, Irish locals who are in the movie who I at least didn't recognize from other films before. But then you also have some pretty big characters. Kerry Condon plays Patrick, Colin Farrell's sister, and I think she is actually a really nice counterpart to him. Like, she brings out a lot of the text of the movie, whereas he is kind of a little bit too dull as fuck to like know how to bring it out directly. And she also represents her own kind of like trying to figure out who you are in a small town and dealing with the limits of this kind of oppressive area where everyone is up in everyone's business and no one has anything better to do. And then like Barry Kagan, we were talking before recording that I don't know how to say his last name. I'm just going Kagan. The character of Dominic, he's kind of like the opposite of her in a way, but the same response of like, I need to find a way for me living in this town to be more meaningful than it is. And maybe his scope is more narrow than hers, but I think they're both just like really wonderful characters. And he's honestly kind of the most pure sympathetic character in the movie in a lot of ways.
Purely sympathetic.
Yeah, sympathetic, simple and pathetic. Is that what that word means? But yeah, I just think everyone here is two-dimensional in a really interesting way, except for some of the side characters like the policeman. I would say not two-dimensional, very one-dimensional, and the dimension ain't good. But I think with all of them too, the movie just does a great job of dealing with very dark subject matter in a lighthearted way. Like I couldn't stop thinking of Calvary while I was watching this movie, because that also deals in a small town. I don't think it's supposed to be an island, though I don't remember the setting of Calvary, but certainly the feeling is he is a priest in a town where there's only a handful of people and everyone is up on everyone else's gossip and they all go to church on Sunday, but they all behave however the fuck they want to, and no one is going to call them out on it because it's a small town. And that movie dealt with really dark subject matter. Like honestly, the central premise of the movie is built around a very dark, painful thing.
Not that you'd know if you came in 5 minutes after the opening.
Yeah,
of the film.
Not that I would know if I came in 5 minutes late, which certainly didn't happen when I watched Calvary. But it's kind of the feeling of like the oppressiveness of a town where there's nothing to do and everyone knows everyone else, and the goodness and evil of people are just jut up against each other, and it's all banal and boring and just a point of conversation, and I think there's just something really there's just something I love about this type of movie. And I think Calvary was very much a pure examination. You know, it starts with a priest, and it starts with a clear ticking clock, right? The people who didn't show up 5 minutes late knew about. This movie is so much more of the Martin McDonagh style, where it's like, I am going to steer into the absurdity and bleakness and people behaving in ways that don't make any sense right from the jump, and I'm going to make you feel something without having grand exposition about what it all means. You know, I'm going to make you feel something just because people are being people, and isn't that emotional? And I just really enjoyed how these movies kind of were in conversation with each other.
Yeah.
There also is kind of a unifying thing here, which is characters who, you know, I think depression is a fair way to read this movie, probably the only way to read this movie. But the way that reflects itself in the characters of Patrick and Colm are guys who are making life-altering decisions that could drastically change, you know, their ability to live happily, what they can accomplish in life. And they seem to do it without caring, without thinking much about it at all. You know, the guy whose only goal is to play the fiddle, who threatens to cut off his fingers if this guy talks to him again, you know. Yeah. There's something about that, like, nonchalance, or that feeling of like, hey, whatever, yeah, I'm going to do it to prove a point, and I'm not even going to be emotional about the idea of doing it. I'm just going to, like, threaten it, you know? There's something that just resonated in that feeling of, like depression feels like too strong a word for the more, like, fuck it feeling that I think the movie is going for. And I think this movie is kind of mining a, like, what happens when nothing seems to matter anymore? Like, what are you going to do? Yeah. You know, and maybe any statement you make, whether good or bad, whether it makes sense or not, is more meaningful than doing nothing.
Well, I think, I mean, you know, college depression or not, like, different people deal with those feelings differently, right? Like, there's, I think Colin Farrell's character has a moment where he's like, if he is feeling bad, why doesn't he just bottle it up like the rest of us? You know, like there's an aspect to, like, learning how to deal with how you feel. But, you know, Brendan Gleeson's character it's like he's having an existential crisis on who and what he is and what he can do. And, like, you know, even in a world where he wrote the most beautiful song ever, how does that escape from the island that he's in? Is it just knowing that he did it? That it, like, he doesn't have a goal, right? Like, it's not like, I want to, you know, I don't want to be Lydia Tarr. You know,
right.
We can string
I
it
was
to
about to mention Lydia Tarr.
yeah. Like, he's not trying to, you know, perform Mahler's whatever numbered symphony. Like, it's he just wants to have created something that for him signifies that he accomplished something. Like, it doesn't, like, obviously he's hanging out in the bar. There's like sessions that happen all the time in the bar where he's just playing music with other players, and everybody's happy and everybody loves it. And, like, so it's not like he isn't performing and doing something that makes people happy. He wants to specifically have written his own thing, and he can't bring himself to do it when he's listening to 2 hours about the things somebody found in their donkey's shite.
Yeah.
So it's a very, it's silly and absurd, but it's definitely a person trying to, and it's funny too, because, you know, characters remark on, like, is there a problem, or, like, do you think you're dying? Like, why are you doing this? It's like, no, I'm just, you know, old, and I feel like I need to do this. And I don't know how long this film...
He does very specifically list how many years he's going to be alive for, which is interesting and kind of never commented on again.
I mean, that's, you know, that's just the going age, I guess, of people in that town.
And that it's funny because his character, you know, is heightened to a degree. Like, obviously, I would not immediately threaten to cut off my fingers because I was frustrated with my time being wasted. But I have felt my darker impulses, the feeling when I get very task oriented, when anything that is not accomplishing something is, like, annoying, and I want to shut it down, and I want to just, like, leave the conversation. I don't want to make plans. I don't want to do something that isn't, like, checking off the checklist that I have in my life.
Yeah.
So I kind of, I know, I understand. As with every movie, I'm sure part of this is the artistic impulse, and how much of this is Martin McDonagh's feeling about creating things to the detriment of the people in his life. You know, I can only guess, but I felt a little bit of that.
Yeah. We haven't talked yet about the old woman.
Yeah, the Banshee.
Yeah, whether or not she's actually the Banshee. She is amazing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did not look her up at all. Has she been in anything else, or did he just find her in a burning building somewhere?
Yeah, he might have found her in the edit. Oh my God, who is this woman that's in every shot?
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Yeah, I love it. And there's it's like sometimes she is played for laughs, and sometimes she's just ominously there. Like there are shots where she is just blurred out in the background, and like it's her, but like it's not like the characters that you're watching in the moment don't know she's there. It's just for us, the audience, to be like, oh, that just feels strange.
Yeah, and that's also the kind of aspect of the movie that feels so much like a play, is it if four main characters who are having the majority of the dialogue, and then a handful of people who you could just see like standing a little bit to the left for a long duration of the scene, just kind of like staring, waiting to give their like two lines, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's something so playful and insidious about it. I really like every time she shows up.
Yeah, like if this was a stage play, she would be constantly talking to the audience about what she is observing of the four people as they sit in their various places.
Mm-hmm. And the policeman character would go full Equus in the stage version of this movie too, for his big scene.
The Puccine heist was was pretty amazing. Oh, good times.
Yeah.
Let's see. Anything else to chat about before we wrap things up?
One, I think there's great animal actors in this movie. Big fan of I'm going to say 3 animal actors in the movie that are prominently featured.
There's a donkey, a dog, and what's the third one? I guess.
Well, the fact that you forgot tells me you weren't listening at all.
Wait, what?
To the pony.
Oh, wait.
But the donkey and the dog are clearly the stars.
Doing.
Yeah.
It was my pony.
The donkey and the dog are the stars. Yeah. But yeah, love the animals in this movie. Otherwise, my main feeling is that I feel like the trailer already gives a little too much away, and like we're even dancing around whether certain events are threatened or what that entails in a way that I truly had no idea how that was going to go. And I think the movie is just great to follow as it evolves and not know anything. So I don't know. I kind of don't like unpacking it too much.
Yeah. Unlike the previous film, which we needed to dedicate like 30 extra minutes to unpack, totally. We just want to let this one lie.
Yeah.
This film, which doesn't actually imply any sort of life experiences on the part of the director or writer.
Totally. Well, because this film has explicit plot beats that I don't want to spoil, which is different than ruminating on the vibe of a movie and what is implied by it.
Yeah. No, I know. It's just funny in a way of while both films involve really, really strong feelings, there's one that has consequences of our assumptions of the story, and this one is more just there for you to play in. So it's interesting exercise that we've gone through.
I think I don't know if this is going to be wildly inaccurate or like offensive, but my thought is that I feel like Martin McDonagh has made 4 movies now, and I would say they are going on a slope from manic to depressive, where In Bruges and 7 Psychopaths are both like on the manic end, right? Like they're all depressive in their own way, but it's like the upbeat ones. And then 3 Billboards starts to be more like grappling with grief, but still feeling something, but just grappling with it and wanting to do something with it. And then Banshees is all about that, just kind of that after feeling, right? The feeling when you've already been drained of meaning and now you're just trying to find a way to pass the time. So I don't know what depressing shite he's going to make next.
Or maybe things will turn around for him and he'll go back to the manic side.
Yep. Manic cool. Banshee Dream Man.
All right. Well, what do you say we get to verdict, Stephen?
Let's do it.
All right. If you were going to give this a must-see, recommend with a caveat, wait for rental, pass with a caveat, or must avoid, what would you give it?
Must-see. I love this movie. It was a blast. I would say it was more funny more often than it was profoundly moving, but it was both. And that is what makes it great. I think it lands more on the side of darkly comedic than it does on the side of. I had fewer tear up moments here than I did with Aftersun. I would say by a considerable margin. Yeah. But I loved it. I found it fun and brain tickling and interesting, and it has layers to unpack. And I think it would be amazing on a rewatch. It's just a great movie.
Yeah, must see for me as well. I had an amazing time watching it. I was a little worried at times because there was definitely more. So I tend to if I'm by myself, I'll take that one seat right middle in the back, and then if I'm there with Jamie, we will take row 10, the seats just over on the right side, and there was definitely a couple next to us, and the guy in the couple was laughing way too hard, and I was laughing way too hard, and I was like, this side of the auditorium might think this movie's way funnier than the rest of the auditorium. So I got a little bit worried at times, but I'm glad.
My audience was cracking up a lot at the movie.
Yeah. No, they definitely were. I think our laughs died slower than the rest of the auditorium.
Yeah.
I may have snorted a few times.
By the way, I'm sure other people have mentioned this, but it's a bad year for donkeys.
Is this going back to more than just Triangle of Sadness?
No, that's the one.
Okay,
there is another donkey movie called EO, but I haven't watched it. I don't know what happens to that donkey.
I think is the poster red?
I don't remember. I just know it's called EO.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's gonna do it.
Maybe not like Captain EO. Maybe it's pronounced like the sound a donkey makes.
EO.
Yeah, it's the one. Is that why the donkey's named Eeyore? Wow, it all makes sense now.
We're just unpacking all kinds of things from our childhoods today.
And Eeyore is depressed, much like the characters in Banshees of Inisherin. Take it away, Christopher.
That is going to do it for our review of the Banshees of Inisherin. Stephen Miller, people want to find you throughout the week. Where can they do that?
People can find me at twitter.com/sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or Twitter.com/ChristopherIRL. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com, where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so to Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at Twitter.com/spoilerwarning, Facebook.com/thespoilerwarning, or Instagram.com/thespoilerwarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from artlist.io. Hopefully I can find a good good track of fiddles. But we'll see what's playing. If it's not that, it could be something else. Yeah, that is it for this episode. For this week, we're going to take off, and we will see you next week with another review of something that we didn't look up before we sat down to record. So catch you later, everyone. Bye.
Bye.